Hey there, this is Dana Arcuri, author, speaker, and wellness advocate. Today's topic is something pretty near and dear to my heart because it's a piece of my own story, and it's about how there is power in our stories. And so today I was driving my daughter to work, and this is the first day where I actually felt like this dark cloud kind of looming over my head, just kind of lifted. And without going into details, for the past few weeks, there's been a real heaviness upon me. And there's a lot happening within our world, especially with politics and a lot of division, a lot of hate. I mean, you can't even watch the news or go on to social media without being greatly impacted with what we're hearing, what we're seeing, what we're observing. It really does directly influence our own lives. And this has just significantly impacted me, especially in the past few weeks. So it's pretty much uprooting a lot of old junk in my life. We're talking the dark, messy, hurtful places, the wounded places that are really difficult for me to re-examine and analyze, and yet I know I'm called to heal. You know, so many times we cannot move forward in our healing path in this journey in life until we feel those feelings that aren't comfortable. Sometimes they're the hard knocks in life, the things that have happened to us many years ago. I mean, we're talking it could be decades ago, but we're not supposed to hide it, conceal it, and bury it and pretend that it never happened. And it doesn't mean we have to dwell on this junk from our past, but what it does mean is if we don't really take a hold of what has happened to us, different times where we felt a lot of oppression, a lot of censorship, times when we were minimized, where we were not validated, where we were told that our stories did not matter, that it could just bring us to a dead end where we think that we don't matter, that our stories don't matter, that we don't have anything positive to offer our world. And it is actually false. It's not real. It's not true. That we have to understand that there is supernatural power in telling our authentic stories. And so I was driving my daughter to work today, and it was first day I've actually felt a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit more courage and hopeful and optimistic about the future. And while I was driving, I noticed these dark clouds in the sky, and it kind of reminded me of how it's been feeling over here. You know, just like these dark clouds are just kind of looming overhead. And so at one point we're driving, and unexpectedly it's like the clouds just kind of were pushed aside and the sun just started shining. You know, the sun rose up and was just shining, and it was just like blasting on me this beautiful heavenly light. And it was almost like I had a little glimpse of God saying, your story matters, and you matter, and everything that has happened to you, there's a purpose, there's a meaning. And while He didn't make it happen, He is not to blame. You know, we do live in a sinful, fallen world, but we have to know that in everything that happens to us and the hard places of life and the times where it is messy and it is tragic and there is grief and loss and suffering, you know, with the benzodiazepines and the Cymbalta and the near-death experience. I'm heading into my 8-year anniversary, Cymbalta free, you know, when I was very close to losing my life back in 2010. And so I sensed that there was this major revelation today that when we come into this vulnerable place where we share our stories, that there is so much power because people, it resonates within them. They identify with us. People identify with these hard, toxic medications. So many people are dealing with that today, or they're dealing with depression and anxiety. They understand what it feels like when there's this dark cloud hanging over your head and you just can't get away from it. We try. We try to just, put on a happy face, but sometimes, we can't move past the hard spots where we feel like we're suffocating and we can't breathe. And yet today there was this major moment, this breakthrough moment, when the clouds parted and the sun just started bursting forth, the beautiful sunshine. And I sensed God's face just shining down on me, him just embracing me and wrapping me in his tender embrace. And instantly I thought of that verse, and it comes from Numbers 6:25 through 26, and it says, "May the Lord make his face shine upon you. May the Lord show favor toward you and give you peace." And that was like today's verse. That was my highlight for not just today and this moment, but for this whole year and the things that I've been facing and experiencing and trying to overcome. And so I sensed that what was pressed upon me was that my story does matter. When we share the places of tragic experiences, of the rock bottom, of times when we are desperately trying to overcome depression and physical illness and fibromyalgia and problems, hey, in real life, there are struggles with our relationships, with our marriage, with our children, with our jobs, with finances, with everything going on in the world around us. And so we could be hit on every side, but we have to know that we must still stand strong, that this isn't the end of the chapter, that there's still so much more ahead of us. And so I wanted to share some things that were put on my mind today while I was driving, and then at this point the sun's shining on me, and I just felt that this depression was lifted, and it was a big breakthrough for me. And so we have to understand there's power in our story. This story that you have and that I have, it is a power to heal. It ignites hope. It empowers other people. It inspires people. It motivates people. It will activate people to seek their own healing. It's for people to jumpstart their own movement, to seek gentle ways to heal, to increase their quality of life, to hopefully regain their health, or at least to a certain degree. Sometimes we cannot undo some of the damage done through medications or through certain events that have unfolded in our lives. But there is still hope that we always have room for improvement, whether it's with our relationships, with our emotional health, our physical health, our purpose, our dreams, and these aspirations we have, and everything around us, that we do not have to just settle for negativity. We don't have to settle with, I'm going to suffer the rest of my life with depression, or I'm going to suffer the rest of my life with, whether someone's divorced or someone's living with infertility or someone's in the middle of foreclosure. We have to realize that this is just part of the chapter. It's not the whole story. There's still so much more to come. And so if there's nothing else that we could learn, it is that when we start sharing from this vulnerable, authentic place, it will empower others to do the same. Understand that there is brokenness to breakthroughs, trials to triumphs. We used to be a victim, but we no longer are a victim. We don't have to remain in that kind of mindset. Instead, we're survivors. Instead, we are going to declare that we are victorious, that we're going to beat whatever we are enduring right now, whatever we're trying to overcome, we're going to beat it. We are going to find a way. And it may not take a day, it may not take a month or even a year. It may take a longer time. It might be a long, drawn out journey, but it's so worth it. I mean, when I look now at the past 10 years, because 10 years ago I was diagnosed with the fibromyalgia, and then before you know it, I was hit hard with depression, and then the medications came on board, and then all hell broke loose, and I practically died. And so it was the hardest journey of my life. And yet the beauty of it is when we hit rock bottom, the only way to go is up. And when we start sharing these true places, the messy places, the dark places, the heavy oppression, when we share what we've gone through, and then we share about how we've started to heal and we've started to learn, everything I've gone through, there's a lesson for everything, whether it's the medication, whether it's the broken relationships, whether it was being separated from my husband and then being reignited with my husband, whether it is to do with the emotional challenges that I've endured in life. Hey, ADHD, depression, anxiety, it is not an easy thing to deal with, and yet I've learned so many different holistic ways to manage the physical pain, to manage the emotions, to manage the painful, horrific places I've been. And so as I'm in the past few weeks opening up the door to some things that I need to re-examine. There are times we are so engulfed in pain that we can't manage what's going on because it hurts just too much. And I was there. I am a survivor of sexual assault ×3. I am a survivor of fibromyalgia. I am a survivor of benzodiazepines and Cymbalta and horrendous other prescriptions. I will not lay down and be a victim. I will rise up. I will be a survivor. And so I share my stories, especially on social media, on YouTube, and through my books that I write. I share these stories because I want people to see that there's power in our stories. There's power in healing. There's power in inspiring others. There's power in knowing that someone else was there. Someone else understands. You're not alone. You don't have to go it alone. You're not a Lone Ranger. That when we together can say, hey, no, it has been quite challenging. It has been the most hellish ordeal of my life, but I'm healing, and I'm learning that there's even more healing that comes forth when I start telling my story. And so when I tell my story, I hope it empowers you to start telling your story, and to just be real with yourself and be vulnerable, which leads me to an amazing quote. And I'm always confused on her name. Is it Brene Brown or Bren Brown? Whichever way we say it and pronounce it. She's awesome. She writes books. She's a speaker. And here is one of her quotes. Owning your story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it and embracing our vulnerabilities. It's risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy. The experiences that make us the most vulnerable, only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we be able to discover the infinite power of light. And so when we allow ourselves to look at those dark places where we've been, the places where things were broken, where it feels like a tsunami has just ripped through our lives, this dark storm that was looming over our heads, when we start really allowing ourselves to share those stories, to come into vulnerability and authenticity, it will help others to realize that they're not alone, that there is hope, that there is healing, and we will inspire them and motivate them to start sharing their own stories. And so today, Start sharing your story because your story matters. And if you want more encouragement and wellness tips, please go to danaarcuri.com. God bless.